It says, could Father talk about how the call to the royal priesthood manifested in his life? How can others discern a genuine call to serve in the church?
Yeah, no, it's a hard one, right? We were just talking about, right, you have to change yourself in order to change others. And so I think, now there's always exceptions to the rule, but what is ultimately a priest? We call it should really be called a presbyter. And what's a presbyter really mean? It means an elder of the church, ultimately, at the end of the day, because really the priest of the church is the bishop. At the understanding, and then we're supposed to be the fingers helping do the work as the church grew. We know that in the Acts of the Apostles. My thing, honestly, in sharing again, like how I came to the church and I ended up at Saints Theodore's, was like, lo and behold, underneath my nose, there was this English-speaking missionary church of the Russian Church abroad that was blessed by Archbishop of Burki of blessed memory. And, once I came into the church, I had no expectations. Like, I always had a thought, an inkling. I would say that there's probably definitely a calling, but I think we're all called to be priests, and we all are priests in some way or another, right? Because the priesthood at the end of the day is what? It's the investment of all the people at the end of the day. And ultimately, whether it's a deacon, subdeacon, or priest, you're serving an office at the end of the day, and you're to do it in the most honorable way you can. So in the calling part, my personal way that I can speak on is let it organically happen. I think completely submit yourself to the liturgical life of the church, be completely involved in the sacramental life of the church, and again, be obedient. There were many challenges that came along the way. I mean, there was one time when I was serving, the priest at the time, he made me so angry. I was so angry I started crying while I was serving. You know what I mean? I was so angry. But guess what I did? I shut my mouth, I chewed crow, and I did what was asked of me, even though I completely disagreed and I didn't even like the way I was treated, right? And I think there's something to be said in that, is I could have let it become a stumbling block, and I could have just left right then and there, or I could have been obedient to it and put my own pride aside. You're right, my own insecurities of what I thought was right and wrong. So I would say that to that question from your audience is, be obedient and come to the services. And when you come, just stand there and let the words run over you, let them lash you, let them literally rip the skin off your bone so you can be transformed and made something new. And do that for a while, so you can begin to be shaped. And then maybe then after some time, start to see, offering time, talent, or treasure is one of our things we do your stewardship model. I didn't have a lot of money to offer. I didn't have a lot of treasure to offer, but I had time and some talent to offer. And so I just came in as a layman, just, serving and helping out Father Peter. And then over time, I was just made a reader, and then time, a subdeacon. And then I had the wonderful pleasure of serving for almost, I think it was 9 years as a deacon, which was just absolutely amazing. And that was kind of funny how that happened. Is I went into confession. Our confession was actually on the other side where the chanter stand is now. And I go in and and I give my confession, and Father gives me the blessing, the absolution, and he lifts it up, and I'm starting to walk away, and he goes, "Oh, by the way," I go, "What's that?" And I thought I was like going to be in trouble or scolded about something, and he goes, "You're going to be made a deacon." And I start walking away, and I'm like, I turn around and go, "Wait, what?" And he's like, "Well, go away. We'll talk about it later, right?" It's just like, go. And so I'm coming around the corner. Well, Matushka Sophia, she's in line. And she goes, "Oh my gosh, it went that bad for you." And I'm like, "Oh, you just wait," And so she came in, and she probably looked the same way I did coming out, pale white and things. And what's interesting in that too, is if you do decide to go down serving as a deacon or a priest, is that your wife has to agree to it too. She has to give her consent as well, because the two are one flesh.
Right.
As well. And, then over time, there's a lot of different things that started to go down. My thought originally, when I had agreed to finally being a priest, because I was asked some time ago, way back when, I just knew I wasn't ready then. I knew my family wasn't ready for it. I wasn't ready for it. And I guess you never really are, obviously. But I thought I was going to be doing a transition from like 2 to 3 years or something like that. And the next thing I knew, the deacon was like, "Nope, Father John, you're here. Father Andrew, you're here." And then some months later, COVID hit, right? And so in sharing that, I think the word I would use is organic. or be organically grown. But if you feel like there is a strong calling and that you know right then and there, then really talk with your spiritual father over it, number one, because they're going to know you best, and because you're being proven by what? Time, right? Time is a great tester of who's really who, because we can put on masks and fake it for a while and things like that, but time, that will erode eventually, and the real person will come out eventually, and we'll really see who's who and what's what, and what really is the calling of the Holy Spirit for somebody. But obviously, you know, I would say then if you feel there's more of a speed to it, and only you could know that with your spiritual father, is then, yeah, you would go to seminary and begin to do the classes, you know, through there, and be prepared to be, you know, put out as a priest. But I like the way the Russian church abroad operates in a lot of different ways. Is, yes, we're probably the poorest as far as like paying our clergy, you know, and things like that. But and again, it's just my personal experience. Being here for going on almost 17 years now, I've been able to build an intimate personal relationship with the people here, with the community and the locality. And again, I'm just a very practical person. And when you look at the birth of the church, that is how they started, right? You know what I mean? Again, like, it's great to have a priest who has all this theological dissertations and doctorates and all these other things. Those are great, and those are good things to strive towards. But I think at the end of the day, being organically grown within the locality of a church and representing the people, you know, there, I think is a beautiful way to become with it. And I couldn't be more happy, and I'm still like awed, you know, when I stand before the holy table. I'm just like, God, really, me? Because I was quite the deviant in my youth, and, you know, things like that. And I still struggle with, like, really, you forgave me? And I know it's just a temptation at the end of the day, because I don't want to bring shame to the priesthood. And I would say that too, is you have a healthy fear of God at the end of the day too, when you go to serve him and you go in that altar, because nobody is allowed in the altar, for example, including me, without a purpose. So when we do go in there, we go in with fear and trembling. And there are specific prayers in the divine liturgy that says, you know, don't hold back your grace because the account of the multitude of my sins. You know what I mean? You know, judge not all those who are here serving, you know, all these different things. So, you know, you come with fear and trembling, but you also come with a discernment, I think, that is proven over time. And I think the Holy Spirit will show you. I mean, I've heard all kinds of crazy things from people slamming their hands on the table and saying, it's God's will for me to be ordained, or this or that, or things. And it's just like, that's completely spiritual delusional. You know, be patient. And if it happens, it happens. And if it doesn't. It doesn't mean you're any less. I mean, in fact, like, if we really look at, like, how many saints are priests, right? There are, obviously, but I can tell you right now, there are way more martyrs, fools for Christ, you know, all these different things that are saints. And that's ultimately, regardless of whether you're a priest or a deacon, on that level, is completely irrelevant at the end of the day. We're all being called to be saints. So whether you're a priest or a deacon or a bishop, we're all carrying the weight of our own sins, still trying to work out our own salvation. And that's what's most important. One of the best pieces of advice I heard from Father Josiah Trenham, he was giving to people who were looking to enter the seminarian, is he said, never lose sight that you're first always a Christian, then you're a husband, then you're a father, then you're a priest. So in that order specifically, you know, and that's how you're to live your life, is you remember your vow that you made to Christ at your baptism. And then if you're called, you're called. If you're not, you're not losing anything. You know, you just don't know. So
yeah.